Hi guys, welcome to Daily Tottenham Hotspur News with me, Barnaby Slater. And as news from Big Ange Postecoglou's pre-Manchester United press conference starts to drip feed out and we get a stronger idea of which players might return, more reports that the board have a firm favourite to replace him if and when he does get the bullet. Meanwhile, our ex-father, Maurizio Pochettino, was very flirtatious this week when asked how he feels about his old club, and I'll bring you my thoughts on this Sunday's El Sacico against Manchester United. Is it possible for both teams to find a way to lose? Surely they'll find that way. And I'll be answering your questions live. All this and more on today's episode of Daily Tottenham Hotspur News. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. As ever, live at 12:30 on YouTube every weekday afternoon. So please do tune in for that. And those of you who are here, please do press the like button on YouTube. And if you're not already, do subscribe to the channel, getting closer to 15,000 subscribers. And also, you can listen to this on the podcast platforms, be that Spotify or Apple. Just go over there, type in the Spurred On podcast, and you can listen to me when you're running or driving your car or whatever it is you do outside. Just a few comments already. Nick in Hong Kong, g'day Barnaby, hello from the Orient. Stu Clark, you had me waiting with 10 minutes to go because of Poch. So let's hear some of this latest news. Basically, Sammy Mukbel, the journalist, who I really like him, he's very good. He says that Andoni Iraola is expected to be at the top of Tottenham's shortlist if Ange Postecoglou is to depart. I have to say at this point, although a lot of people are saying, like I mentioned in the opening, that this Sunday is kind of El Sacico. It's not really an El Sacico because there's no way they're going to get rid of Amorim, but it might well be seen as an El Sacico for Big Ange Postecoglou. But I just think that if they've let him go this far and the players are starting to come back, and I'll get into that kind of team news because Ange just started his kind of pre-press conference briefings to the journalists. So there is some news coming out, even though the press conference itself, I believe, starts at 1 o'clock. But even though Ange is under a lot of pressure, without any doubt, I just don't think, even if they lose against Manchester United, and I hate to be negative, but I think there is quite a strong chance we might lose against Manchester United. Even if that happens, I don't see how they can let him go now, because the Europa League starts again for us, in at the beginning of March. And we saw last night, I'll go into this a bit as well, but you saw last night that some strange things can happen in the Europa League. I think we were all fearing that we might end up going to Galatasaray. Well, they got absolutely whipped last night. So I think some kind of level of, not changing things too much right now is probably what the board are going to go with. And as I've mentioned before, Daniel Levy and the board have been given so much stick down the years for sacking managers too early. I really think that they're trying to go the other way this time and give Ange Postecoglou as long as they possibly can. Blip 1982 says in the comments, unless we get relegated, Ange will be with us next season. I'm not sure about next season for sure, but I think certainly till the end of the season. Guys, over 100 of you watching concurrently already. Thank you so much. 19 likes. Let's try and get these likes up to 50 if we can. And also make sure you do get in the comments, because I will be discussing all of your questions with you as the show goes on. Like I mentioned, huge result last night in the Europa League as Galatasaray lost 4-1 away to AZ Alkmaar. Don't forget, Spurs have already played AZ Alkmaar and beaten them at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this season. That was in the first leg of their playoff tie. Spurs will either play the winner of that game or the winner of the Sociedad Midtjylland game, in which Sociedad won 2-1 in that first leg at Midtjylland. So it's likely to be either AZ Alkmaar or Real Sociedad in the next round. And frankly, let me know how you feel in the comments, but for me, I would rather we played AZ Alkmaar. However, playing devil's advocate, there is a narrative in which you say, well, actually Tottenham have done better against the better sides this season, so maybe we should play Sociedad. But either way, I think we were all pretty much in agreement, unless you're different. And we do have some Turkish fans in the chat. Let me know how you felt about the possibility of Spurs going back to Istanbul to face Galatasaray. Welcome to hell and all of that. So for me, I think that was a good first leg. Now, that's not to say that Galatasaray couldn't turn it around in the second leg and beat AZ Alkmaar, 3-0. But even that would only level it up, and there are no away goals. So they'd have to win by a 4-goal margin to win outright. And you've got to think that whilst Galatasaray are attacking, AZ Alkmaar might well pick them off. And we might see Tottenham playing again against Troy Parrott, who did score from the penalty spot last night. Okay, some more news on what I was talking about in yesterday's video about this Qatari interest in potentially taking over Tottenham Hotspur. I was listening this morning to Golden Guest Talk Tottenham, the Football.London podcast, which is another good one with Alistair Gold and Rob Guest. And Alistair Gold was saying how, usually we hear these reports every 6 months or so that somebody is interested in potentially taking over at Tottenham, buying the club, and this time keeping Daniel Levy in his position. However, there is some reports from French journalists where a source close to the Qatari government has said this: the Qataris are fed up with the abuse they get in France. Obviously, they are the owners of PSG. Forced prosecutions, blackmail, daily criticism, blaming others for their total incompetence. All the problems in France are their fault, meaning the Qataris' fault. Every time they try to help, it is apparently for soft power. This is pure abuse and everyone has had enough, a source close to the government declared. Incidentally, this latest development comes just a few days after some separate reports claiming that the Emir of Qatar is willing to listen to offers for Paris Saint-Germain. So could the stars be aligning with Qatar pull out of their investment and try and sell Paris Saint-Germain, change their strategy and take over a Premier League club, in which case maybe all these reports of their interest in Tottenham Hotspur could come to fruition. It's a little bit of political news, but you just don't know. They seem to be pretty fed up in France, that's for sure. There's some other news from Alistair Gold. Spurs have submitted plans for new medical facilities and an improved treatment room at Hotspur Way, the training ground. Hallelujah. I have no idea whether actually building new medical facilities and an improved treatment room would stop us getting from getting these injuries. As you know, I've been pretty forthright about my feelings that it can't be coincidence that these injuries all come under one manager. We've never had such a terrible injury record, certainly not in the last 15 years or so. But maybe the answer is building these new medical facilities, in which case, make it happen, Spurs. Make it happen. Just going to get into the comments a little bit. Graham Hill asking, is Solanke's injury worse than reported? I think Solanke is seen as being kind of one of the next ones off the cab rank, the next taxis off the rank, as Ange likes to say, which will be in the next couple of weeks. He's not been in the list that has been reported today as being back on the grass, but I will get into that later on. Blip1982 says, unless we get rid of, I've said that one, sorry. AB, it says, Ange will see out the season. There's little point changing right now, especially if their main targets are unavailable, unlikely to consider a change of job until the summer. Guys, if you're one of the over 200 people concurrently watching this at the moment, thank you so much. But also let me know just in a one-word form, do you think Ange will be our manager at the beginning of next season or not? Yes or no? Let me know in the comments and I'll try and work it out. Also, if you haven't pressed that like button yet, please do press that like. Let's get up to 50 likes. The more likes that we get, the more Spurs fans can see this episode live. Ian Weston says, let's keep Ange and give him time. AB says, my heart says Poch, my head says it's never as good the second time round. Whereas Alex Lee says, come back to us, Poch. Yes, it's great to see nice words from Poch. I'll talk about that in a second. Aidan Walshett says, Barnaby, are the beanies for sale? So I'll tell you about this hat. It is a Tottenham Hotspur and Beavertown collaboration. I got it from the Spurs club shop. If you don't know about Beavertown, Beavertown are the main brewery of Tottenham Hotspur. They have a deal in place and they actually have their brewery within the bowels of the stadium. So if you haven't been to the stadium, there is the Beavertown brewery there. Beavertown, a pretty cool beer. They make neck oil. If you've never had neck oil, it's their kind of main beer. And that is for sale at all of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium bars. So this beanie, I don't know, check it out online, see if you can find it, but it's a Beavertown Spurs collaboration. But yeah, it's absolutely my favorite. I actually bought it for my girlfriend, but she does not get to wear it because whenever I've had a shower, I've been for a run this morning, then I had a shower before making this video, and I cannot do these videos with wet hair because I just get too many comments. Graham Ingledow says, sticking with Ange through this period will pay off big time. We have to stop the revolving door with managers. Well, isn't it fair to say, Graham, and thank you so much for your comment, isn't it fair to say that this time Daniel Levy is not revolving the door? He's under so much pressure. This is the worst that any manager has been in this period of time where Levy has got so much stick for sacking managers so quickly. And this time is the first time really where he hasn't done that. You got to give Levy, if you're one of the people who has been so critical of Daniel Levy for sacking managers too early, then this time you almost have to, I'm afraid, as hard as this will be, give Levy some credit for, not sacking him as yet. Just a report coming in from Ange Postecoglou's press conference. He says that Mickey van der Ven, QT Romero, and Dominic Solanke were looking at the next 2 or 3 weeks for them. Now, listen, just breaking off because of that a little bit, I think that goes with my theory now that basically Ange Postecoglou and maybe the board have agreed is just saying to those players, don't worry about it until the Europa League. We're now all in on the Europa League, and all we care about is that you're going to be fit for those Europa League games. First leg, second leg, rest in between, rest afterwards, just play those games. And if we've got those three straight down the spine available for those games, Solanke, Van de Ven, and Romero, then that does give us a much bigger chance of winning those games. I guess you talk, wouldn't you, about what's the chance of them being fully match fit if they're only playing a few games every month in that instance. But actually, I think in terms of us winning the Europa League, that's our best chance. So maybe wrap them in cotton wool and do it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is that a wise way of dealing with it, or is that a bit mental? Let me know what you think. Let me just get back into the comments. Reese Rigg says, watching Oso Spurs and learn about Ange's history, they interviewed people who worked with both Spurs and Celtic. Okay, yeah, I'll check that out. Darius S. Talbot says, honestly, the grifting you Spurs fans go live with on this platform. Poch is not flirting with Spurs at all. Propaganda spreading Mel. Oh, Darius, well, thank you so much for watching, mate. I appreciate it. And thanks for the engagement. Listen, I appreciate all of the engagement we get on this channel, and it's absolutely your subjective view to slag me off as much as you want. However, I just see it as, I have this channel to report on the club that I love and to talk about the things that I watch. And I watched the social media clip of Mauricio Pochettino get a little smile on his face when he was asked about Spurs and talk about how he watches all of their games. And yeah, for me, it looked a little bit flirtatious. You look at him having had lunch with Ozzy Ardiles and Glenn Hoddle and all the ex-Spurs players last week. That is not the kind of thing you do if you are like poo-pooing the possibility of ever going back to Tottenham as manager. He's talked about it before. He said he had 6 years there. He said that him and his staff, they still have the feeling for the club and that he wants to go back there one day. So listen, Darius, very welcome to slag me off, and thank you for watching. It's all good as far as I'm concerned, but I think to call it propaganda is a little strong, mate. You're getting a little right wing, and I wouldn't get so bothered, mate. It's Friday afternoon. Just chill out, have a good one, enjoy the start of the weekend, crack open a beer or something. AB says, I heard the new treatment centre is to be called Hamstring House. Very good. T-Rex Leg says, would prefer if Qatar or anyone take over, make a barrel of money available for transfers, then hire Pochettino. So T-Rex Legs, Darius, is up for talking about the Pochettino situation. 234. In terms of my asking people in the comments to say whether they think Ange will be manager at the beginning of next season, I can say that only one of you said no. 13, 14, 2 no's, 15. Basically, a high percentage of you said that they think Ange will be in charge of Tottenham Hotspur at the beginning of next season. The actual comment from Mauricio Pochettino, when asked about Spurs singing his name last weekend, he said this: my relationship with the Spurs fans, the love is there after 6 years. And then he was asked whether he tunes into the Premier League despite his move over to America. And he said, I watch all the games I can. And of course, one of the teams I always watch is Tottenham for sure. T-Rex then goes on to say in the comments, can't help but think Levy would still do Poch in somehow. Yeah, I mean, listen, I do choose to look back on it and say that just Levy wasn't able to give Poch the painful rebuild, that his words, that he asked for, and he wasn't able to invest in the team as much as Poch needed because of the stadium build. And hopefully, if and when Poch does come back, which, realistically certainly won't be until well after he takes America to their own home World Cup next summer, maybe then the purse strings would be loosened because we'd have more money in the bank, or we'd have an investor, and Poch would be able to really build a squad in his name. But it's all very, very hypothetical at the moment, isn't it? And I'm wary of winding up Darius too much by talking about it. Triple J says, Poch can F off and just go and do the job he's currently hired to do. Fans need to move on. Like I said, it's all very subjective. For me, I still think of Pochettino as my dad. I never had a better period of time supporting Tottenham than I did under Pochettino. And he's just, for me, a terrific manager, really great man manager, and also knew exactly what kind of players he needed in which positions. And also just, he really realized that you need physical strength down the spine of your team if you're going to have any chance in the Premier League. And that is something that I feel like we're lacking at the moment. We're not strong enough straight down the spine. Certainly not while we have those injuries anyway. Blip 1982 says, how often do returning managers find success? Well, in this country, I would say there aren't that many great examples of it, although obviously Moyes is doing a good job in his early days at Everton again at the moment. But in Italy, they go back to their old clubs all the time. and Spain. It happens all the time. Sean Pierce says Ange deserves one more season. Reese Rigg. So does Ange get any credit for taking us from 8th to 5th after Kane leaving? Yeah, good point. Really good point. Thank you for writing in. I think he does get the credit for that. I think we had a great season last season. A lot of it was built on that, first eight wins out of 10 in the first 10 games, 8 wins and 2 draws. So that was 26 points from our first 10 games. After that, it was pretty mediocre. But he gets credit for taking us to 5th. But in the same way, I think you also have to say he's the manager of the club. He's in charge of everything that happens at Tottenham Hotspur on the playing side. And therefore, he has to take responsibility for these injuries and how we deal with the injuries from now and keep people fit for the Europa League and hopefully a deep run into that competition is going to be the key to whether Ange Postecoglou keeps his job. Now that is basically his one job now, getting people back, getting them fit and not having them re-injure themselves. I don't have the answers as to how he does that. I don't understand about training. I don't understand about medicals and medical facilities and medical staff or anything, but Ange needs to find a way to better his record in terms of getting his best players on the pitch. Tony Jefter, thank you for your comments. There's no chance of selling the club. No owner in his right mind will sell when his share price is at its lowest. When the price goes up, Levy will sell. Maybe. Yeah, interesting point, I guess. Although I don't think the share price of Tottenham Hotspur is probably that affected by what goes on at the pitch at the moment, except for the fact that we're not in the Champions League. And like I said earlier this week in one of my videos, when you see the amount of money that Liverpool and Aston Villa and Arsenal have made from this season's Champions League because of the new format, because of more games and more money for victories, Daniel Levy will be looking at that with envious eyes, and that will definitely be in his mind in the summer, I think, in terms of trying to get back into the Champions League. Joe says, I tend to agree that Van de Ven and Romero will be used sparingly before the Europa League games. I think that just makes sense, doesn't it? Tony Jefter again says saving them is wise. Triple J says Poch destabilizing Ange's position, disgraceful. Oh, Triple J, you don't seem like in a very positive mood today. Come on, it's Friday, guys. Let's not get too negative. Let's save that for Sunday at 6:30 after Man United have found a way to turn us over despite them being in the worst form in years. Guys, nearly 300 of you watching this concurrently at the moment. Thank you so much for your support. Press that like button. I'm only 14 likes away from 100. The more likes we get, the more people will watch this live. As we've just reached 300. I'm loving your support, guys. I'm loving these chats that we get at 12:30. Stuart Dack feels strongly about Ange. He says, Ange in charge next season? I bloody hope not. Well, tell us how you really feel, Ange. Sorry, Stuart, not Ange. Die Price, this is a nice one for a Friday afternoon. If everyone that's managed Spurs were in a Royal Rumble, who would be the last man standing? I love that question. Feel free to ask more left field questions in the comments, guys. But for me, Die, there can be only one answer. Big Martin Yol, Sir Martin of Yol would win the Royal Rumble. Nobody would get him off his feet, let alone over the top rope. Absolutely no chance whatsoever. Okay, I'm going to go briefly into my Spurs versus Man United preview, and then I'll get back into the comments, guys. Like I said, the real press conference, I think, is starting at 1 o'clock, and it's 10 to 1 now, but some of the news has been drip feeding from Ange Postecoglou and the training ground. Guillermo Vicario is back and available for selection for the Man United game, according to Big Ange. So you would think, wouldn't you, that Guillermo Vicario will come straight back in for Tony Kinski. I think he's done a good job overall, Kinski, especially considering his age, and he was thrown into the deep end. I love his distribution, I love his confidence on the ball, but he does look like maybe he's played a few too many games in too short a space of time, and that's maybe what led to that nervousness and the mistake at the beginning of the Villa game. So you'd think Vicario will come back. We've missed his shot stopping, that's for sure. I think what will be really fascinating is whether Vicario and Kinski have been working on the training ground together, and Kinski has been able to show Vicario a little bit more how to be assertive from corners and set pieces and just make sure you make the first move to plow out, use your fists and just go through everyone to try and get rid of it. That is something that Kinski is a lot more confident at than Vicario. And Man United, who have kind of learned from their lessons from all of the Olympicos that have been scored against them from corners this season, they are now quite regularly trying to put the ball on top of the keeper's head from corners. So Vicario, if he plays this weekend, will face that. James Maddison and Destiny Udogie have also returned to training and are expected to be available for selection. Brennan Johnson and Timo Werner have both returned to training this week and are edging ever closer to returning to the field. Wilson Odobert has also returned to training on the grass, but caution will be taken with his reintegration after he's had a lengthy spell on the sideline. So basically, those other players have a chance of getting in the squad on the bench, but Odobert, I think, will be taken longer with. And actually, for me, in terms of him being our one acceleration pace player, I would probably give him another month's training as well before letting him loose, and keep him with Van der Ven, with Solanke, with Romero, and say, no, we're only interested in using you for Europa League squads and Europa League teams. Because imagine that, if we had those players all properly fit for the Europa League, it would be like a fresh team. That's 4 players, 4 big players coming in for those Europa League games. So that's what I hope that we're doing now. Ange Postecoglou said this: some of the lads who've been out quite a while look like they're in a good place now. Vic is probably the one who's come back ahead of schedule. He's been training really well away from the team for 2 weeks, and in the last 10 days, he's integrated back. Just confirmation that Christian Romero, Mickey van der Ven, Radu Dragusin, Dominic Solanke and Richarlison all remain sidelined for this game. Obviously, Dragusin out for the season, and probably, I would suggest, into the middle of next season as well. Guys, let me know in the comments, what kind of team do you expect to start for Spurs out on Sunday against Manchester United? For me, it wouldn't be a surprise if it was a very similar team to the Aston Villa team. I'm hoping that Tell will play in the 9. Sonny more likely will play on the left. I would like to see if Udogie is fit, but I doubt he'll be fit to start. But if he was fit to start, I'd like to see Udogie come in on the left and Spence go across to the right and give Porro a break, a rest. He's played too many minutes and too many balls are going in behind him. We're conceding too many chances there. And I think Jed Spence defensively would be stronger in that position. And then the other change in the back line I'd like to see is Ben Davis come in for Archie Gray alongside our new signing, Big Kev. I'd like to see Davis and Big Kev in the back line, Vicario behind them. And then in midfield, I don't know what you think, guys. Let me know in the comments. But for me, it's much of a muchness in midfield because none of them are playing that well. But they have had a week off, and everyone's in the kind of podcast this week are talking about how they've had a week off. So, they'll all be rested. But Man United have had a week off as well, and it will have been one of the first weeks that Man United and Amorim have had together without a game to really work on his positions and patterns. So I really do think Man United may be relatively strong this weekend. Just some stats: in the 24 matches in the Premier League so far this season, there's been a combined total of 85 goals in Spurs' matches, with their erratic and entertaining style of football, something that is consistent across all competitions. Man United's best performances under Ruben Amorim, as I've been talking about this week, have come against the so-called bigger teams. They won at the Etihad against Man City. They won on penalties against Arsenal at the Emirates in the FA Cup, and got a 2-2 draw against Liverpool at Anfield too. So that'll be a bit of a difficult one for Spurs, I really do think, at the weekend. Let me know in the comments what you predict the scores will be. Obviously, Spurs enter this game off the back of defeats to Villa and Liverpool 2-1 and 4-0. But prior to that, Spurs had back-to-back victories against Brentford and Elfsborg. However, prior to that game against Brentford, we lost 2-1, of course, at home to Leicester City. So you cannot say that the Premier League form is that good. Man United, meanwhile, have won 4 of their last 5 matches, with the only blot on that losing at home 2-0 to Crystal Palace in their most recent Premier League game. Amorim's men did, however, beat Leicester 2-1 in the FA Cup. They have 4 injury doubts heading into the game. Johnny Evans, Martinez is out for the season. Luke Shaw and Mason Mount all set to miss out. So I guess my team realistically would be Vicario. This is a best case scenario team. I'll tell you what, I won't do best case scenario team. I'll do the team that I think it probably will be. I think it will be Vicario, Spence on the left, Davis and Danso in the middle with Porro on the right. Then I think it will be Bissouma, Bentancur, Kulusevski. And then it will be Son on the left, Tell in the middle. And actually, no, I'm going to say this: Kulusevski on the right and Bergvall. Bergvall in central midfield. That's what I think the team will be. Let's see what you guys are saying. Jamax in the comments says, Ange is tactically bereft and can't make his one-dimensional footy work in the Prem. Levy is damned if he sacks, damned if he doesn't sack, given the fan backlash. I don't agree that he's tactically bereft. I do think there has been some naivety to his tactics, and that is something that needs to change, frankly. So, Jamex, thank you for your comment. Do you think then, you're saying that Levy's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. I completely agree with that. So what do you think he's going to do? Do you think he's going to let him stay until the Europa League and see how we do then? AB says there's a difference between do you think he'll be in charge versus do you want him in charge? Yeah, it's exactly what I'm kind of saying, isn't it, really? QO Jinsei says, Ange out only if Poch comes in. JJJ, oh, you're being negative again, so I probably won't go into that. Triple J, but thank you so much for your comments. Really appreciate it. Reese Riggs says, how can we want him back? We can't keep thinking like this. We're moving on. And then he says all the trophies we won under Pochettino was phenomenal. Listen, we all know we didn't win a trophy under Pochettino, but I don't think that was because of any lack of brilliance from Pochettino and the squad. We were excellent during that period, and we were very unlucky not to win anything. And if we were in a position as a club where we'd been able to properly invest during his time, then I think without a doubt we would have won some trophies. Don't forget, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Not many teams win trophies. It's basically the teams who win the teams who win the trophies are the ones with the highest wage bills, and Spurs don't have a high wage bill because they have lots of debt and they have to have relatively low wage bills to keep with their AAA, I think it is, credit rating, so that they can pay off their debt at a premium interest rate. AB says, I think Poch believes he could get a proper tune out of this Spurs squad. Maybe. Soul Sniper Gaming, thanks for your comments. Says, hope to see a front three of Tell, Solanke and Odebear with Decky rested, match fit for Europe on March 6th. Yeah, that would be an amazing front three, actually, wouldn't it? With like pace on both sides and Solanke being able to hold it up. We've really missed Solanke's ability to hold it up in the final third since he's got injured. It's been a bit devastating. Stuart Dack, thanks for your comments. Says, we were playing one game a week last season because we were dumped out of the Cups early. That's why we finished 5th. Yeah, but also considering we were only playing one game a week, and lots of us had been talking in advance of how good we thought Spurs would be playing just one game a week. Actually, sometimes it looked like the players were slightly undercooked, and as a result, we couldn't, towards the middle and back end of last season, we couldn't get any rhythm in our legs. So after that, we were like, oh, I think we'll be better when we're playing 2 games a week, and that hasn't come to fruition whatsoever. Mark O'Brien with some positivity here. We are halfway through a complete rebuild. We need to stay patient. Recent signings are all for next season or maybe the one after that. That is some dangerous common sense from you there, Mark. I appreciate it. I pretty much agree. But let's face it is difficult, especially when you're watching games where Spurs aren't really able to put in any kind of performance. It is difficult to retain that level of common sense and positivity. But in general, I totally believe you and agree with you. Sorry, David Blair says, it's not up to Levy, it's up to the Lewis Trust, who owns 70% of ENIC if the club is sold. No, exactly right. It's not up to Levy. He's not the owner of the club, but he owns a stake, about 29%. And the rest of it is indeed ENIC, which is owned by Joe Lewis, or officially Joe Lewis's family, because it's in a trust. Reese Riggs says, Barnaby, bro, you can't call someone negative then say we'll get rolled by United. Yes, I agree with you. That's true. But I think that more comes from a place of realism rather than negativity. Our form is appalling. We do have, home advantage, which is a strong thing. But the reality is, I just think Man United, having had a week with Amorim, coaching his kind of patterns for the first time, they showed me enough in that Carabao Cup game, even though we beat them, where I think they will cause us trouble. I hope I'm wrong. I also prefer to be a little negative on the results in the hope that I'm completely wrong, but let's see what happens. David Blair, in answer to that Royal Rumble question earlier, says Joel would destroy them all. Completely agree. Nick in Hong Kong adds to the Spurs potential availability list. Madders has a chance, apparently. That's good. Prospector says, wow, Vicario back. Let's go, baby. Soul Sniper Gaming says, best team: Vicario, Spence, Romero, Van der Ven, Udogi, Gray, Bergvall, and Decky, Tell, Solanke, and Odebear. That's a lot of players who aren't fit, would need to be fit for that. Blip982 says, if Vicario is fit, he'll start 100%. Yeah, I kind of agree. Graham Hill says, Kinski has done so well playing with an ever-changing back four. Yeah, for someone so young and inexperienced in the Premier League, he really has done incredibly well, and we have to give him his props. And I do think he's probably the future of Tottenham Hotspur's goalkeeping position, but he'll get kind of bled in slowly over the next few years in cup competitions. Graham Hill also goes on to say, Jed Spence should be right back on Sunday. Yeah, I think if Udogi was match fit, he might well be, but I think they'll probably try and slowly bring Udogi back in, because obviously he's been injured not only this season for a long time, but he was injured at the back end of last season as well and missed the Euros, didn't he? HodGod10, thank you for your comments. Says, love your podcast. Unfortunately, I'm Ange out. I really wanted him to succeed. I would love to see Alonso as manager, young, ambitious, and tactically astute. Come on, you Spurs. I think, sadly, Leverkusen's Xabi Alonso, who went last season unbeaten, of course, will be getting probably the Real Madrid job next. That is most likely. Sean Pearce, some strong views here. Johnson and Werner do not deserve to be at a club. They're simply not good enough. Well, Brennan Johnson is a very young player, so I think he's had some really good runs in the team, and he's had some periods where he scored a lot of goals in just a few games. He has shown more than enough talent for me to show that he's going to be an excellent player for Tottenham Hotspur as he grows as a player, as he grows as a personality, as he rises up through the hierarchy of the club. Timo Werner, though, I will agree with you. He just doesn't have the confidence. He's totally shot, and he shouldn't really be seen. If these players are coming back from injuries, I don't think Werner should be seen in a matchday squad again, but I bet he will be. David Blair says Mickey's obviously injured himself again, unless managing minutes is just not playing at all. Edis says, when's the Europa League draw? That'll be next Friday, my guess. And HMQ says Big Kev looks decent. Yeah, I agree. He started really well. Mark Swift says, Barnaby, if you're Levy out, what are you doing about it? Well, I've been pretty consistent about how I feel. Thanks for your comments, mate. I'm not Levy in and I'm not Levy out. I'm not Enoch in or Enoch out. I'm old enough to remember how the times were before Enoch. I'm old enough to remember when the Northumberland development project started. I'm old enough to remember what that project was all about. And I'm old enough to know that Tottenham, what they're trying to do under Enoch and Levy and what they've been trying to do is grow the club through infrastructure, which is a part of keeping to the rules of the incoming PSR, which was first discussed, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, to grow the club sustainably through infrastructure to become one of the biggest clubs in the country. And we're getting to that situation. Now, I do understand that a lot of fans who are younger don't have the memories of how bad it was before, of genuine relegation battles, of us nearly going out of business under Irving Scholar, of Alan Sugar and Terry Venables having to save us. So they don't have that kind of money in the bank. What the younger fans have only seen in the last 10 years or so is us being a proper top 6 club every year, mostly getting in the Champions League, but always coming last and not winning a trophy. So I understand the frustration there. But I am always a little bit, be careful what you wish for. I don't look at a lot of other owners and chairmen and think, oh, wow, they are so brilliant. I don't look at Abu Dhabi and the sports washing that they've done with Manchester City and the way that they've broken all of the rules and the way that everything that they've won, by the looks of things, has been kind of tainted. I don't look at all of that and think, oh, I'm desperate for us to get a Gulf oil state in. That's just not the way that I feel about it. But do I think that Daniel Levy and Enoch have made some terrifically bad decisions in terms of optics, in terms of the furlough, in terms of the Super League? Just many decisions like that they've made that have really looked bad? Yes. And do I think they need to do a better job? Yes. Do I think they need to spend more money on wages? Yes. But do I also think that there's a possibility that once the proper revenue starts coming in from the stadium, and I know it already is coming in, but once we kind of started to properly pay off that stadium in the same way that I hate to say it again, but South London Woolwich did it between 2006 when the Emirates was opened. They didn't spend any money until 2013 at all. They had to sell their best players in that period. It's important to remember that. And that was because they'd spent money on a big stadium. And we're only we're into our 6th year from the stadium being built. And I think there is a long-term project to get Spurs on the pitch up to the position where they are off the pitch. But as far as I'm concerned, we just have to be a bit more patient. But I know it's difficult to hear and I know it makes people angry and I'm sorry about that. But just to answer your question, Mark, I'm not a strong Levy out enough to say I'm going to go and protest or join the Change for Tottenham brigade who are planning the protest against Man United. I don't have any problem with the guys who do feel strong enough for that. I do think it'd be interesting to see who would buy Tottenham Hotspur. But I think there are a lot of clubs who have been bought out down the years and have suffered as a result. And one thing you can say about Tottenham Hotspur is they are run brilliantly in a way where they're not going to have points deductions. They're not going to go bankrupt anytime soon. And you do just fear, or at least I do just fear sometimes, of the kind of be careful what you wish for. AB says, I want to see Tell at 9 and Odebear on the left. I don't think he's going to be fit enough to start, unfortunately. Probably doesn't happen this weekend, AB says. Maybe only as Wilson coming on as a sub. I think Wilson will probably be left for longer. Let's keep going. Andrew Harris on YouTube, thanks for your comments, says they've been playing better when they get a few days off and on the back of a quick backup, they're poor. They'll go okay this weekend, but they'll be nowhere near their top. Jazzles, thank you for your comment. It says it's almost impossible to predict the score of a Spurs game right now. Given recent performances, I say United will win. However, Spurs do seem to turn up to the bigger games. I'm going 3-1 to Spurs. Listen, I would love a 3-1 to Spurs. If we won against Man United, that would be 2 Premier League games won in a row. Ipswich away next week, which wouldn't be easy, but we have another week off before then. Probably some more players back fit for that. And we could start looking potentially at going on a proper run. But it is the hope that kills you. And as I said before the Aston Villa FA Cup game, Liverpool had just lost to Plymouth. And Liverpool were pretty much the only team left in the draw where I was like, well, there's no chance we'll beat them. So I went into that Aston Villa game being like, oh my God, I'm actually hopeful Spurs could maybe win the FA Cup. And then we put in the performance that we did. So there we go. Aniconic Arden, this is funny. He says, I'd still be proudly supporting Spurs in the National League, knowing that not one drop of terrorist blood money is funding the team. I love and support. Levy in, Ange in, whinging supporters out. Wow, positivity. You won't be appreciated by a lot of Spurs fans for saying Levy in, mate, but everyone is allowed their own opinion. It's all subjective. That is what being a football fan and a Spurs fan is all about. You are allowed to feel how you do, as are the purple and gold people, as are Tottenham Away, who have been very angry on their YouTube channel this week. And if you don't watch it, if you don't like negativity, I'd say probably don't go there. But they seem like, half decent lads. I've spoken to them a few times and they're all right. RB says, I don't know why we have to be so polarized. I'd rather just have a more present and transparent feel to the club. I feel suspicious towards the board. They could soften some with a little understanding. Yeah, they could do better with their communication. That's absolutely right. But equally, I have to say, none of the chairmen really come out that often and talk to the press and talk to the fans. So it seems unlikely, I have to say. JL says, Enoch and Levy out, both sucking the club dry by focusing on profit over the actual football. We've invested nothing in decent players. Tony Young says, oh yes, Barnaby, I remember those days. Delboy, PSR is fictional. The big teams just pay their way out. I have to say, there is unfortunately an element of truth to that. Some of the other clubs have not been playing by the rules the way that Levy and Spurs have. Chelsea selling their own assets to themselves as the perfect example of that. And that is ugly. And you've just got to hope that at some point the Premier League find a way to punish those teams for that, and that Manchester City will be punished for the 115 charges. But you do fear that with the money that these big clubs spend on lawyers to get themselves out of trouble, you do fear it, I have to say. RB says, I recall the bad days of the 90s. I used to go and see Spurs at home with 11 to 12,000 fans in the stadium. Not great times. It is important to remember that stuff. I know it's difficult. And Darius, who earlier, said he was a bit older than I expected. I appreciate you getting back in touch, mate. And listen, we're all allowed our own feelings. Absolutely. Football and Tottenham is a release from the everyday drudgery, and you should absolutely be allowed to be stressed out and angry about it if that's how you feel. It's just not how I feel. I choose to retain a glass half full mindset where I can. Mind you, if you see my post-match reaction videos sometimes and I'm going apoplectic, in the moment, it can be very, very difficult. Surf South, thank you for your comment, mate. Says Levy isn't going to win anything other than most disliked club. Well, the irony of that is, I think he's disliked by a big portion of the Spurs fan base, but a lot of other fans look at Daniel Levy and what he's done for Tottenham and think they wouldn't mind having him as chairman of their club. So, it just goes to show, not many teams can be in the top six. I know we're 14th this league, but I mean in general, over the last 10 years, not many teams can be in the top six, and Tottenham have become a big club. You have to face that. One of the top six clubs in terms of size in the country. That means there are 85 other clubs, 86 other clubs doing worse than Tottenham Hotspur. So it's all relative, guys. It really is. AB, Levy has been ahead of the curve when it comes to alternative revenue streams. We will benefit from that going forward. Although we struggle for on-field success, the club as a business is sound. Ryan Gloria says, trust Levy. Mike Novel says, I see light at the end of the tunnel because of the youngsters coming through. Yeah, that is due to Spurs' transfer strategy and looking to kind of become more like a Borussia Dortmund team who grow young players, buy young players and bring them up and hope they all grow together. That is also what we did when we got success under Pochettino as well. David Blair, going back to what will happen in this weekend's game, he says, normally when we win, it's by blitzing the opposition with 3 or 4 goals in 15 minutes. Would love a goal in each half and a clean sheet against United. Agree. Edis, thank you so much for your comments. Says, so you would rather not win anything with Levy and not buy quality players. We spend big on average players. Conte called out the board. Conte did call out the board, but don't forget Conte also wanted to leave himself. He'd had his gallbladder removed. 2 of his best mates had died. He was fed up. He was doing a decent job. The football was ugly to watch, but we were in 4th place at that point. But that was just, he called out the board, and I think they agreed to mutually end it. He was a good manager for 6 months, but then he just got a little bit too Conte. But doing well at Napoli. David Blair, Man City already know they've got away with the 115. They wouldn't have spent that much in January if they weren't sure. Let's see. I really hope not. I do think there'll be riots if Man City get away with 115 when the likes of Nottingham Forest and Everton have received points deductions for like 1 charge. Matt Watson says, glass half full is fine, but realism needed to, and the tactics are shocking. I was talking more about the board and what's happening in the back room in terms of glass half full. There are difficult times on the pitch. That is For sure. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching and getting involved in this episode of Daily Tottenham Hotspur News. I thank you. Really appreciate your support. Love chatting to you guys 12:30 every weekday. Please do press like on this video if you're watching, and please do subscribe. If you're not already a subscriber to my channel, please do press that subscription button so we can get up to 15,000 subscribers. Really enjoying it. Let's hope for a great result against Manchester United on Sunday afternoon. Enjoy your weekend, guys. Cheers, and come on, you Spurs.